When's the last time we set this?
This morning.
Okay.
Smile.
All right. Give it a couple minutes here. There's some people coming in. I'll give it just a couple more minutes here and we'll get started.
Well, as everybody is settling in and people are logging on, let's go through a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, welcome to the Metis Group Elevating Performance, or as we typically like to call it in here, Accelerating Performance, an innovative strategy for success. So we are going to be spending about a half hour, pardon me?
I'll begin sharing the screen here so we can have on the same page.
All right. So we are going to spend approximately 30 minutes. These usually last 20 to 30 minutes of us going through something and then answering questions as well. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. One of us will be monitoring that. It will also be recorded. So for any of you who have registered, if you run into technical difficulties or you can't stay for the whole thing, or you really wish you could have had one of your other team members on here, we will make this available and you can feel free to share it at that point to whoever you wish. Just in case we have people logging in for the first time to talk to us, we should give them a little bit of a background on just you and me. I know there's a slide, I think it's the third slide, that tells them about the Metis Group. But John and I are both business and marital partners. In about 2 months, we will be coming up on our 56th anniversary, if you count both the years we've been married and the years we will have been in business. So we give ourselves double credit when we say 56. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I just will start off with a disclaimer. We're going to do something unique on this particular webinar. We're actually going to show live a scorecard in action, and which means we're gonna exit out of our slideshow and go into a live Google Doc. And I'm not quite sure how this software is going to support that, but we're going to find out. So as a result, you can kind of see I'm running Cindy's computer, she's on mine. We're going to drive from hers and see if we might be able to show this thing in action that way. So we're learning as we go here.
This is one of my very favorite slides. John and I are both in different forum groups, and so we get together with peers every month and we talk about progress or lack thereof, and we try to solve each other's problems. And in one of my forum groups one January, our chair asked us to go around the room and explain to everybody else how we had performed against revenue goal. And so one of our team members came out and said we had performed 43% over goal. That wasn't even just year over year, that was over goal. And of course, the rest of us were all applauding in just awe. And he said, no, hold on. It dawned on me, if I grew the business by 43%, but didn't grow myself by 43%, what was I going to do when the business outgrew me? And it was all kind of a V8 moment for all of us. And I took a step back and said, well, wait, what if we just grew the business organically year over year by 5% and we didn't grow the team? And so as I thought about that, we came across this slide, and I think this pertains especially to people who have been with you for a long time. When you bring people in, so you see the business is at the blue line and the person coming in is at the orange line. I don't think if I circle it. So when you first hire the person, their performance is higher than what you even needed, and you think this person is awesome. And so they're doing this job and they're so good at it. You say, hey, can you do this too? And can you do this? And can you do this? And before you know it, this job resembles something that nobody in their right mind would take on from the outside. So over time, the expectations become less clear to the individual. They haven't done anything to develop themselves. now they're underwhelming you because they just aren't hitting the numbers. They aren't meeting the metrics. They aren't doing what you thought was possible. And quite frankly, their mind reading skills are pretty pathetic. So there's a huge disconnect between what the business needs and what they're capable of at the time. And a lot of times we think the business has just outgrown them. Sometimes we've learned that that has more to do with the communication around the expectations than anything else. And it's just as important to go over what we need moving forward as what we need to stop looking backwards.
Yeah, I think this scenario is coming into play more now than it has in the past, as organizations have had really good 2022s and 2023s and even 2021. The businesses have grown at rates we've not seen in the past, and it's very difficult for the people to keep up at the same rate. It's now we're starting to see in 2024 organizations stepping back and focusing on their talent and what they can do to close this gap. In the past, the way organizations have closed the gap is they've just went out and hired better people and more qualified resources and closed the gap that way. Well, with unemployment still around 4%, we aren't able to go out and buy our way out of or hire our way out of that gap. What organizations are beginning to realize is they need to close it with their existing people. And what we have found at the scorecarding process that we're going to be talking about today and some of the other leadership acceleration tools organizations are employing is helping them close that gap. In 2024, we are seeing is going to be the year leaders are focused on closing that gap.
So as I promised, the third slide would be a little bit more about us. We are the Metis Group. We are behavior experts at work. So by that, we mean we like putting processes in around the people part of the business to give you more predictable results. Sure, we use some assessments, but we're really passionate about understanding how humans interact in the workplace and how do we accelerate that performance. We start with selection. How do we get the right people in the right seats? Leadership can be about the individual or the group. How do we get more out of them? And that tends to lead towards the acceleration of both the performance of the individual and the organization as a whole.
Hire them, grow them, and keep them.
Right.
So we mentioned that this gap is really what we want to focus on. And the tool that we're going to talk about today to do that is going to be our job scorecard. And we've been trying to measure performance forever. In the mid 50s, Peter Drucker, probably the pioneer of leadership and management, was quoted with the infamous quote that we all refer back to is what gets measured gets improved. And we're always in search of finding different ways that we can measure the performance of our organization. And it's a little bit more difficult to measure the performance of individual team members. And we came across this quote just recently in Fortune magazine from Deloitte, where they're talking about most business leaders feel they don't have a great way to measure employee performance today. And so things haven't changed in 70 years. We're still looking for ways to manage our business by coming up with certain measurables. And it's our scorecard or a job scorecard that can be used to help bridge those measurables or help determine those measurables. And we're going to walk you through our scorecard today and show you how you can set one up and how to best use technology for performance management.
I think one of the things that we've talked about in the past is we've explained how to put a scorecard together, why they're important. We haven't actually demonstrated how to use it to accelerate performance. So one of my challenges as a recovering HR person is I've seen a lot of really pathetic performance review forms, and they do more to promote mediocrity rather than just looking back and looking at how has someone performed in the past. And nobody really wants to give out the high numbers. Nobody really wants to give out the low numbers. So there's a lot of mediocrity. We want to look at how are we going to accelerate that performance moving forward. We don't have enough people, as John said, so we have to get more out of the people we have without making them or us crazy. So how do we, yes, measure what's going on, but do it in a way so that it helps people understand where we need to go, not just use it as a punitive or an annoying process.
So we're going to stop sharing here of the slides and bring up our scorecard.
Yeah, we know this is a dense slide. It's really not meant to be read.
All right, here we go. Let me reshare. It's intentional. Okay, let me share that.
So, we're still in search of a new software for webinars. If anybody has anything better than Demio, it is really clunky to try to change any screens.
So this is our scorecard here, and one of the what?
It's a profile, it's not a scorecard.
No, I got to get rid of this. All right. Oh, just forget it. I need to get to the bottom. That's the problem. All right. So this is a spreadsheet. And you'll see in this spreadsheet, this is a Google Doc, this is a Google Sheet. And this Google Sheet is shared between the leader and the direct report. Sometimes this Google Sheet is shared with HR, but minimally it's shared between the two people, the leader and the direct report. One of the things that we do when we create our scorecard, and we would recommend you do when you have an individual scorecard, is to show what the ideal personality, what the ideal characteristics of the individual should be when they are doing the job. So in our scorecard, one of the first things that we do in our first tab is we have a tab of the job profile showing what the expectation of behaviors are for the job. Typically, when you're not meeting your numbers, oftentimes it's because you're not demonstrating what we call avatar characteristics or the profile that is needed for that particular role. So we start each one of our scorecards out with a summary of what might be expected of the behavior in the job.
And the reason this is important is because when you're using 4 sciences, as you should, no one is ever going to match the avatar perfectly. It's absolutely impossible. But it is important for the individual to understand what characteristics we need them to utilize at any particular given time. So when someone is struggling in a particular area, we can go back and look at the avatar characteristics and understand for short periods of time, you might be expected to adapt. If that doesn't work, we might need you to surround yourself with other people who can make up for those areas in which you're not strong, or you develop some coping mechanisms. But it helps you understand where the characteristics are that you aren't perfectly aligned to and how to have a plan for addressing it.
So you'll see that this is just a simple spreadsheet. This is the first tab. The second tab is, you'll notice it is locked. This is the original scorecard that was created for the job. Now, a scorecard will change every single time that is being reviewed. And you'll see that the review dates will be shown in each one of the tabs as the review is done. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. You'll notice that on this particular scorecard that it's broken into categories, so that this is for an executive assistant, sample of the executive assistant. You'll see that each one of these categories has a label. So this particular category is called President Support. You'll notice that it has a priority associated with it and a percentage of time that the person is expected to be spending in it, along with various success factors, and then check boxes to indicate whether the success factors are being met or not. And we'll show you how that's used in a second. But you'll notice in this particular example, President Support is one of the categories. Teen Future 10X Company is another category. Special projects or events is another category for this particular sample executive assistant. HR activities is the 4th category, and management of the office is the 5th category in this particular sample. And you can see this spreadsheet has a separate list of success factors from the various activities in each one of the categories.
but notice that there is not necessarily a one-to-one ratio. In fact, rarely is there a one-to-one ratio from the success factors to the activities in the accountability category. As an example, in operations, metrics were met, managed to budget, profitability was demonstrated, are usually three that cover 99% of what you need in operations. And so you're just looking for overall what would success look like. And as John mentioned, it includes percentage of time and priorities. Rarely is there any correlation between the percentage of time and the priorities. In fact, very frequently, your number one priority can be the smallest thing that you're doing. But if it's not done well, it throws everything else off. So it's being clear not to get lost in the that knocks down all the time when you have other very important, not urgent things to do.
And you'll notice this particular scorecard, and on each one of the lines, there's an area for notes to be captured. Additionally, what we recommend all scorecards contain are four form field fields where it can be noted the accomplishments for the review period, any sort of personal development that occurred during the review period, the goals that are going to be set for the next review period, and how the core values have been demonstrated. These are the four areas of performance management that Jack Welch made popular in General Electric, and he did his performance reviews on the back of a napkin using just these four areas. This is what we recommend the leader and the direct report fill in throughout the review period as well as during the review, along with reviewing each one of the success criteria. So the scorecard is not only just checking off yes or no on the success criteria, but it also is hitting these four main areas of performance management.
And one of the reasons this is so critical is studies have shown that unless there was something traumatic or dramatic that happened in the last quarter, the average supervisor remembers only the last 6 weeks of a direct report's performance. So you really don't want to go farther out than a quarter, but this allows you to do things. So our office manager will very frequently throughout the quarter, or I will, go in there and populate different things that happened. There was something a few weeks ago where I sent her an email and I said, way to skate to where the puck is going to be, which is one of our core values. And so I can guarantee you that example is already sitting in this quarter's tab for the review period for how core values were demonstrated. And she is a voracious reader. So every time she completes another book that's related to things, she's listing that in personal development. For those of you who run on EOS, it's also important to know that what you did last quarter and what you're going to do next quarter are frequently tied to your rocks.
So this is the locked spreadsheet. This is the starting point. Now you notice the next tab says next review TBD. What's going to happen is after every one of your review periods, a new tab will get created and the date will get entered to reflect the date that the review occurred. Now, what's happening throughout the review period is both the leader and the direct report are pulling up this shared document and they're making notes on the document real time through the review period so that when they do sit down and do the review, they already will have some of the notes from the period captured. And you can see in this particular example, we noted that there were some things done in some of these success areas, and then prior to the review, notes are made in each one of the four quadrants of performance management. This all gets done prior to review. Now, when the review is about to take place, what we recommend happen is that you create another tab here, and we have a script that does it automatically. And what you'll see here is that this tab that was a TBD is now called Review 213 on 1848, and that another tab has been created that has been cleared of all of the notes and the notations from the previous period. And now the review can take place on the tab that has already been saved off. It is in this tab now that the direct report and the leader will go through each one of the success factors and have a conversation as to whether or not that success was met, incomplete, not met, or no longer applies. So in this particular example, the very first success factor is additional time supporting the president was experienced. So the direct report and the leader will determine whether that's a yes or
And that's
or
because it went up from 30% to 40% that particular quarter.
yeah. The next one is the president was able to accomplish the rocks. Yes, incomplete, or no. So one of the success factors for this executive assistant was to make sure that the president had the capability of completing their strategic goals, and that was on their scorecard.
Yeah, because that means that the executive assistant had removed all of the clutter from time suck things on the desk or things that were distractions, so that good quality time could be placed on the important, not urgent things. So that distractions were eliminated. Or for me, I would tend to get sucked into things that just caught my attention, which I've been told don't necessarily bring value. And those things have been removed from my desk so that I can focus on the more important things.
So we won't go through each of these, but during a review period, the each one of these would be checked, yes, incomplete, or no, for every one of the success factors in all of these areas.
So sometimes I think of the INC on top of the yellow, which I know is hard to see, as inconsistent as opposed to incomplete. So perhaps sometimes it's done well, but it's not quite a habit yet. And so it may be a little more inconsistent as opposed to incomplete.
Now, what we have found is the value of the scorecard isn't the fact that you're going to get a lot of yeses and few no's. The value of the scorecard is the conversation that occurs on each one of these success factors. So for this success factor here, for instance, inbox 0 at the end of the week was experienced. So we know in this particular executive assistant, if she's done a good job, or he, then the inbox would be 0 for the president. And it isn't the fact that it was accomplished as much as they can have a conversation about what they got to do around inbox 0 expectations, and use that for each one of the success criteria that they're having a conversation about. Once the leader and the direct report have completed this document and checked off yeses or nos on each one of the success factors, they then go to the 4 quadrants and fill in each one of the 4 quadrants on what had happened last quarter. So here's an example of some accomplishments that this EA would have had, how they have developed themselves. So here's some examples of what would go into that section. Goals for the next review period would be listed there, and then the core values that are being noted are listed in this 4th category. All of this is in the tab dated with today's date, along with the notes and the yes or no check boxes on the scorecard.
And so I'd like to, because it's a separate voice jumping in here, catch everybody's attention for a minute. And if you're going to jot down any note, please write this down. It is absolutely critical when John showed you that you set up the new tab, the new review tab TBD, before you start going through and checking off the extent to which somebody was on track or off track. And he's going to show you why moving forward, because now you're going to start looking at what are the expectations for the next quarter. And if you wait too long to save it and move forward, it's going to mess up your timing completely.
Right. So all of this happens during the review. Now, the next thing that is done after we've reflected back on the previous review period, now we need to focus our attention on the next review period. So what we do is we bring up the next review tab whose date hasn't been set yet. And this is where we begin to establish the percentages and the priorities and make any adjustments to our scorecard for the next review period. So in this particular example, let's say that in the next review period that we want this to be 20% and we want the team activities to be 30%. We would make our adjustments here. Maybe when we want to make this to be our number one priority for the quarter, this gets switched to the number two priority. Maybe we would add a new success factor in this particular section.
So this is supposed to reflect changes that actually happen in your business or in the role. As an example, about a year ago, we switched back to a different CRM. And it was our executives or our office manager's responsibility to help us with that transition. And not only transfer all the data that was in one and move it into the next, but also train everybody, all the rest of us, how to use it and keep it current. So there were actually new accountability activities put into that about making sure the data was clean and was transferred over in a timely manner, that we didn't lose any data was one of the success factors, that people were trained on a timely manner. And so imagine the difference in priorities, percentage of time, as well as accountabilities and success factors that would impact it. But this allows you and your direct report to stay on the same page, because it was because that time and effort was going to increase. We also had to be clear about what could take a back burner while all the focus was on that, because it's impossible for everybody to just have things added and added and added. You have to get clear about what shifts if that goes up.
So now you're ready to begin the next review period. This tab has been cleared off. All the notes that were set from the previous review period are cleared. All of the notes in the 4 quadrants are cleared. And now you're beginning the next review period. You can begin capturing your notes along the way. Now, you'll also notice you're now building a review history. So in this particular example, we have the original scorecard. We have the scorecard from the first review date with the results that had been recorded there. And now we have another tab set up for the next review period. Now, what will happen is after this review has been ready to go, and you would click the update and say, yes, you want to do the update. And you'll notice that another tab has been created to reflect the next review period. And that previous review period that was all of 8 minutes was set aside and captured as a separate tab, which will now reflect the performance history for the role.
So one of the things that everybody always gets surprised about is going through this with a direct report and just how many green boxes get checked, which is a good thing. That's what it should be. We have a tendency to, if somebody is slipping in one area, call them into our office. We get up the courage to address this with them. We talk about it for 20 minutes. That's the only thing they hear. And as they're walking out, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I should be putting my resume together. We know that the balance between course corrections and positive feedback should be at least a 3-to-1 ratio. But quite frankly, most of us don't make the time to give a lot of positive feedback. By having all of these boxes one at a time, we had a very new employee about a year ago. We were going through this, and he had all greens, I think 2 or 3 yellows, mostly because he just hadn't learned that part yet. And he said, wait, so all good, so everything's pretty good? Everything's going well? And I said, yes, we said this was just going to be a review. This isn't a performance surprise, it's a performance review. And so we were all on the same page, and he was relieved. Now, as we said, for those of you who've been through our selection process in the past, every now and again, a psychotic or a neurotic can slip through. It can't screen all of those out. But a lot of times we find leaders wait too long to remove somebody, a cancer who's not working out well. And a lot of that is we blame ourselves. Maybe I wasn't clear about my expectations. Maybe I didn't explain this well enough. When it's in a document like this, it's clear. If you have primarily yellows and reds, this is an issue, and instead of doing it quarterly, you can easily use this monthly or even every 2 weeks to make sure, and so that If you are having too many yellows and reds month after month, quarter after quarter, it'll become much easier to decide we need to part ways. This isn't fair to this person. They want to feel successful. We need success in this role. Let's work through a clean transition.
So that's the idea here. A couple of things. It's a shared document. We haven't used Google Docs, but you can use any other shared platform that you have. Another is a spreadsheet. We create a separate tab for every review conversation. Success criteria gets checked, yes or no, and then a free-form area for the 4 Jack Welch areas of focus on the job, which are the accomplishments, how did you develop yourself, your next goal, and how did you live your core values. So that's that simple. It's the conversation that occurs, which is the value of a document like this, not necessarily getting all yeses. So let me stop the sharing here and pull back up the slides if I can get them.
Oh, it worked.
Not there yet.
Oh, no, not yet. Close.
All right. So this whole idea is to close the gap, and you can see it's just another tool to help raise the performance, to close that performance gap that the employee might have. We believe job scorecards should be in place for every single job. It's only fair for the person doing the role to know how they're doing. We have scorecards in sports. We have scorecards in business. We have scorecards in education. We have scorecards for our goal tracking, our personal goal tracking. There's no reason we should not have scorecards at the job level for our team.
Heck, we even track our sleep with our smartwatches.
There you go.
Right?
So,
so we have our first question. We have someone who asked, can you make a successful hire without a scorecard? Well, there is luck. there is the roll of the dice. It is possible, but we do know the number one reason that people quit is because of their boss. And when third-party surveys went back and said, what about your boss is making you crazy? The first 2 of the 7 items that came out was the job was not as it was expected to be, and it didn't fit their needs and interests. So imagine the clarity that exists when that's established up front.
Yeah, I only think it's fair to a new hire. It's a great recruiting tool as well, is to be able to attract superstar candidates by showing them that there is a scorecard in place. It helps them understand the organization is committed to the role, and it becomes a great recruiting tool. Another question that we had here earlier was, how often might you go through the scorecard review? And we recommend at least quarterly. As Cyndi mentioned, if there are some performance issues, you might want to do it more often. The beauty of this particular tool is we did it in 8 minutes. You can do it as quickly and regularly as you'd like. Oftentimes you'll see new hires being walked through their scorecard monthly. Senior people, you might only need to go through it every couple of months. So it depends on the role, but the idea of having it into a spreadsheet gives you the flexibility to do it as frequently as you can.
So I think the other thing to keep in mind is that it's rare that anybody's going to have all green boxes. This is an opportunity to make sure you're on the same page. And but most of them should be green. It wouldn't be unusual to have 2 or 3 yellows where you have to shore things up. It is important to make sure that you are on the same page. So the other nice thing is it's the document that's facilitating the conversation. As leaders, very frequently we're uncomfortable taking someone aside if there's a sensitive issue to discuss or a performance issue. And now there's not. It's the document. You just point to the line and say, are you on track or off track? Are you on track or off track? And I would say, except for maybe when our office managers changed dramatically, jobs changed dramatically when we moved from Michigan to North Carolina full-time, and that kind of blew up her job. And so lots of changes in those quarters. Most of the time we get through them in 20 to 30 minutes. Again, it's the, I don't want to say repetition, but it's the regularity of going through these on a regular basis.
We had a question about the development of a profile and the characteristics in the scorecarding, and how that is done objectively. What we like to do when we create scorecards is bring in the stakeholders for the job, and that's typically the leader of the role, one or two incumbents of the role, any direct reports that may exist for the role, other peers or departments who may be impacted by the success of the role. What we find is the more stakeholders who are involved in creating the activities and the success factors in the job creates more clarity for the people in the role and helps the organization understand success across various units, not just between the leader and the direct report. So that we like to bring the stakeholders in collaboratively to build out both the scorecard and the job profile to help them understand what characteristics are needed. So one of the things that we do, to back up a little bit, is we create a scorecard before a profile.
Yes.
So the profile that we showed you was done after the scorecard was created, because we need to know the characteristics that are going to be required to accomplish the success
what
factors
activities
in the job.
do we need, right?
Right. So you want to build a scorecard first before you then focus on the characteristics needed to complete the success factors.
Yeah, when you think from a sports perspective, the characteristics you need for a good linebacker versus a good quarterback are going to be completely different. So if you aren't clear about what the job is first, you could be inadvertently getting a 5'8" guy who's 165 pounds to be your linebacker, and that's not going to work out real well. The other thing that's, we just recently did this with one of our clients who brought people in who'd never been in a position like this before. They were building out, there were peers in the role, there were direct reports, there were others. And the direct reports started off, I don't know why I even need this person in this role. I don't need a boss. We're fine on our own. We don't need somebody to micromanage us. By the time we were done, they were so grateful. They said, this was so awesome. They said, we were afraid somebody was going to be micromanaging us, when we realized this person's going to remove obstacles and deploy resources. They're going to be more accessible than the president has been. They were so thrilled to lay out what this role was going to be. And they looked forward to this person coming in instead of saying, yeah, well, let's see how this guy works out. Part of the same question was, how might this format be used to calibrate performance across employees? So each employee would have their own Google sheet in our case. But even though they're identical, because some of them may be identical, their performance will be different. So you could easily do that. Sometimes as one person starts excelling more, your expectations for that person might grow. You might have different development plans for that individual. So it can still be individualized but having some standards across.
Another question we had is the implementation. How long does it take to get once we have the stakeholders complete the scorecard and it's put into a format that we've seen here, that just an administrative cutting and pasting, it can be used immediately. So what we like to be able to do is if we're using the scorecard for an open role, is not only is the scorecard shared with candidates so that they have an understanding of what the expectations of the role are, but during onboarding, the scorecard is reviewed between the new hire and the leader. The percentages are adjusted to reflect that first 90 days of the hire, along with the priorities. And then at the 90-day point, after the review, the percentages and the priorities get changed again to reflect the second quarter of hire.
It does usually take us about 3 2-hour sessions if we're doing it virtually, 5 or 6 hours to do it in person in one sitting, which is usually very difficult these days. But I know somebody asked, it feels like micromanagement to list out every activity. It really isn't every activity. In fact, we have to sometimes stop people from going too deep. So as an example, we had one the other day that was around conducting a variety of analyses that would lead to better planning. And one of the individuals in the room wanted to start listing out every single analysis that needed to be done. And we're like, no. Analysis need to be done for better planning. And then the success factor was that there were no avoidable surprises. So we covered what we needed to. So we don't try to get into the micromanaging piece. In fact, when you have this much clarity on the job, it does tend to allow the leader to kind of let go a little bit more, because the clarity is much better than if they're left to their own devices. And someone asked if we could share the Excel scorecard. It's not in Excel, it's in Google Sheets, but there is a sample of it in the ebook, which is accessible by the QR reader right there. Or there are samples on the website, I'm sure.
Yeah, the Google and Microsoft, they don't talk well together. So you can, what we have found is you can export this Google Sheet to an Excel document. Most of it will export fine. And those clients who need to run on a Microsoft platform can take that Excel document and use it as a starting point for them to build their scorecard. And that seems to work pretty good. It changes regularly.
But the macro won't work.
Well, the macro won't work, but the actual formatting of the columns can transfer most of the time. If somebody does want an Excel copy, just send me a note. I will give you the exported version, which is going to have some formatting issues, but I'm sure anybody who's an Excel whiz can clean them up and be able to work from them.
My rule of thumb is, if you're an organization that insists on having everything done in Excel, that tells me you probably have an IT department. Ask them to do the conversion for you. They're the ones who care.
But you know what? It's simple enough. It's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have a tab, and we've all been using spreadsheets and tabs for
Since Lotus.
Right. So we don't want to let the technology overcomplicate the conversation that occurs.
Right. Gosh, guys, we went long, but hopefully you found a lot of value out of this. There are some other things on our website. I'm sure you'll find, if you were looking around the selection process stuff, or how this gets, how this is a foundation for all of our selection work. It's also a large part of leadership acceleration. How do we really get outstanding performance out of our direct reports? And this is just one of the 8 techniques in our leadership acceleration process. So feel free to check that out.
Close the gap.
And close that gap. That's right. If you have any other questions, John and I try to be available. You see our website is themetasgroup.com. John spells his name like a normal person, John. So john@themetasgroup.com. Mine's a little weird, but you can send it to Cyndi@themetasgroup.com. And we'll hope to see you at the next one.
And you'll be getting a copy of the recording, if not today, sometime tomorrow.
Sounds great.
You can
Take care. No, you have to end it from yours.
Try and click in here.